The day my husband's plane crashed into the sea, I broke down. I followed him into the waves, ready to die. It was only after they pulled me from the water that I remembered it was April Fool's Day. As I drifted toward unconsciousness, I heard the familiar, mocking voice of his mistress. "Oh, darling, your wife is hopelessly in love with you," she teased. "Can you imagine how she'd react if she knew you were just playing her?" He laughed softly. "React? Please. Since giving birth, Nora's as tame as a rabbit. Just make sure no one lets this slip. This is the final test of her love." Laughter rolled over me, mingled with secret promises. Lying on the stretcher, I realized my tears were spent. What John didn't know was that this moment marked the end of my patience as well. From then on, my heart stopped keeping score for him. I woke in a hospital room. A single, peeled apple rested on the bedside table. Before, when I was ill, John never bothered to appear. He'd just send his assistant with a pile of expensive remedies. Seeing my blank stare, he picked up a slice of apple and held it to my lips. "So, I'm alive and you're speechless?" My eyes drifted to a faint love bite on his neck. My voice was calm, almost eerily so. "John, let's get a divorce." His hand froze midair. He popped the apple slice into his mouth with a loud crunch, a mocking smile playing on his lips, then made a call right there in front of me. Soon, our son, Leo, was brought in. In the months since I last saw him, he'd grown taller, but he was still a stranger. Before I'd finished nursing him, John's grandfather whisked him away. Visits were limited to family dinners at the estate. I understood why John had brought him. In the past, whenever I resisted or gave him the silent treatment, he would send Leo to soften me. I had lost count of how many times he'd used that tactic. But now, it held no sway. Seeing Leo, slightly chubby, stirred nothing in me. He frowned, a perfect miniature of his father, even speaking my name in John's dismissive tone. "Nora, you're still boring." "Dad, I don't want to be here. I want to go home and play with Miss Lily." "Miss Lily?" No wonder he never called me Mom. He already had a replacement. John's eyes narrowed. Leo froze, hesitating before trying to crawl into my arms. Daddy's being mean to me. Once, I would have wrapped him in protection. This time, I pushed him away. "Go cry to your Miss Lily." Two identical faces, one big, one small, stared at me in shock. I pressed on. "John, I mean it. The divorce is real. This isn't a game." Anger flashed across his features, quickly replaced by a sneer. "Nora, if you keep playing hard to get, it won't end well. Cross me, and you'll never see your son again." So, he thought I was playing another one of my old tricks. I remembered last year, when he sent a starlet to the hospital with serious injuries. I demanded a divorce then, too, only to be locked away for 6 months, denied any contact with Leo. That's when I learned my lesson, and when I realized I could no longer love him. "John, after I'm discharged, I'm moving out." My voice was steady, my eyes locked on him. Finally sensing my seriousness, his expression darkened. "You want a divorce? You'll have to earn it." Only after he left with Leo did I pull out my phone and text a number I hadn't saved. "I've decided. I'll leave after the dance competition next week." Once out of the hospital, I returned to the villa, packed a small bag, and headed to the dance studio. My decision was final. John and I were done, and I would let nothing tie me back to him. When I stepped into the dance studio, every pair of eyes turned toward me, unreadable expressions frozen on their faces. A colleague pulled me aside, her voice low and urgent. "Nora, what did you do to anger Mrs. Sterling? She not only stole your spot in the competition, but she also convinced the director to fire you." "Mrs. Sterling?" I followed her gaze to the center of the stage. There stood Lily, dripping in gold and diamonds, every inch the pampered, entitled mistress. I had almost forgotten that she flaunted herself around the studio under the title of Mrs. Sterling. Now she basked in the admiration of the other dancers, then caught sight of me lurking in the shadows. "Oh, Nora," she cooed, syrupy sweet. "I'm so sorry. I suppose my dancing is just a better fit for the competition. That's why the director gave me the only spot. I didn't care for her games. This competition mattered to me, and I wasn't about to give her victory." "Lily, what exactly is your level of dancing? The level where you perform for men in private rooms? And while we're at it, why don't you tell everyone who you really are?" She had started as a small-time influencer, streaming her talents online. She had only earned a place in this prestigious studio thanks to John. Once meek around me, now she dared to challenge me, Enough was enough. Lily's face turned crimson, tears brimming. Just then, a hand slid around her waist.
John.
His eyes bore into me with quiet menace. And who are you to question her? The words stuck in my throat, bitter. His mother had died because of me. 9 years of marriage, a child, still not enough to repay the debt he claimed I owed. He had once grabbed my throat in drunken rage, growling, "Nora, you married into this family to atone for your sins, not to enjoy a life of luxury. Don't forget your place." Lost in thought, I barely registered him leaning closer, his voice a low threat. "Nora, if you want to keep this job, you'll move back home." Now I understood. He had been the director Lily referenced. He gave her my spot and threatened the studio owner to ensure my dismissal. His aim, to force me to retract my divorce demand. When I didn't flinch, a cold smile twisted his lips. "Feeling bold? Think you can escape my control? I'll just have to break your wings. Then we'll see how you fly." He made a quick call. Moments later, my phone buzzed. A text from my best friend. "Nora, I think I angered someone. I just got promoted last month, and my boss just called to say I'm being let go." I pressed my lips into a thin line, packed my things, and left. Behind me, Lily's mocking voice floated. "See, Nora? You're just like me, dependent on a man. I thought you had some backbone." My hand gripped the suitcase tighter. "Have you forgotten? We're not divorced yet. He's still my husband." Suddenly, John's hand clamped onto my arm, iron strong. "Nora, who gave you the nerve to bully Lily in front of me? Haven't you learned anything?" A sharp sting pierced my heart. In all our years, he had never publicly acknowledged me as his wife. People knew we were married, but they also knew he was never without other women. If I couldn't compete, there was no reason to wait another week. Relief fluttered briefly in my chest. Before returning to the villa, I stopped by a law firm, printed a divorce agreement, and sent another text to the same number. No need to wait a week. I'm leaving in 2 days. Back at the villa, I sat on the sofa, lost in thought. John came home unusually early, standing in the entryway, eyes fixed on me. It felt like confronting a ghost of my former self, the wife who used to wait for him at night, smile at him, help with his coat. Years had been swallowed by a life revolving around him, yet never earning even a glance of appreciation. Seeing my blank stare, John frowned. "What are you thinking? Running away?" I almost laughed. "And if I was? What would you do?" He approached, then suddenly pushed me onto the sofa, skillfully changing the subject. "You don't like our son. Let's have a daughter. Quieter. She could keep you company. Make your life easier." I remember the early days of marriage. Staff saw his indifference toward me. My quiet nature made me an easy target. They dumped every menial task on me. I had been in love then, never complained, even when he watched coldly, detached. Now, his hands pulled down my nightgown. Kisses fell on my skin, fierce, dominating, punishing. But I felt nothing. When the heart is gone, the body doesn't respond. Losing interest, he pulled away, scrutinizing me. "Nora, I know your body. This isn't how you should react. Tell me, have you been with another man?" John, possessive and hypocritical, couldn't stand the thought of any man touching me. I bit my lip, letting out a bitter laugh.
"Yes."
"Exactly what you think. I've slept with every man at the studio. Planning to have them all arrested?" His eyes narrowed, voice low and husky. "Is that so?" Then he swept me into his arms and carried me to the bathroom. "If you're dirty, we'll just have to wash you clean." He threw me into the bathtub, ice-cold water hitting my face. Goosebumps erupted. I struggled, but his grip was iron. PTSD from my parents' plane crash at 13 hit me in waves. I curled into a corner, trembling. John thought I was faking. "Nora, don't forget why you married me. You're here to atone, not live in luxury." The same line, repeated over and over. 9 out of 10 words from him carried venom. Seeing my eyes glaze, body trembling, he finally panicked, pulling me out and laying me on the bed. "What's wrong? What's happening?" "John, you've tormented me enough. Let's let each other go." Rage surged. I grabbed the divorce agreement from the nightstand, throwing it in his face. He stared at the signature line, then snorted. "In such a rush to divorce me. Another man waiting for you, isn't there?" I said nothing. He slammed the door. Tears streamed down my cheeks. But it was okay. After tomorrow, I would be free. The next day, John's message appeared on my phone. "If you want my signature, come to the Hilton. Suite 708. I've had the staff prepare an outfit for you. Inside the suite, a modern cheongsam awaited, perfectly tailored to highlight my narrow waist and shoulders. I pushed open the door and was immediately met by noise, chatter, and a crowd of leering eyes. Lily's smile was sharp and blinding.
Oh, Nora.
Mr. Parkinson wanted to see someone dance, but I sprained my ankle. I suppose you'll have to take my place. A man's gaze roamed over me like a predator, sizing up prey. I understood immediately. This was John's plan. He wanted me to dance in Lily's stead. Nora, you want a divorce, don't you? John's low whisper brushed my ear.
Fine.
I'll give you what you want. Dance for him tonight until he's satisfied, and I'll sign the papers. Then he shoved me toward Mr. Parkinson. His arm wrapped around my waist, eyes glazed with desire. They say a dancer's waist is a thing of beauty, and now I see it's true. Don't worry, I promised John I'd be careful. Just dance for me tonight, until I'm pleased, and I'll sign the contract with Sterling Corp for 6 months. I stared at John, disbelief and fury mingling. Everyone in their circle knew about Mr. Parkinson's obsession. He couldn't control himself around a woman with a slender waist. A previous victim had ended up in the hospital with a broken back. I wrenched free and tried to run, but John caught me before I could put distance between us. Nora, don't be so dramatic, he said, his grip iron strong. It's just a touch. You won't lose any flesh. Consider it your bargaining chip. So this was the cost of my freedom. The room was thick with the scent of perfume and the low hum of anticipation. I stepped forward, the cheongsam clinging to my frame, every eye in the suite drilling into me. Lily's absence was the first relief. I didn't have to compete with her performance, but the relief was fleeting. Every gaze on me was loaded, expectant, predatory. I felt Mr. Parkinson's presence before I saw him, his gaze a physical weight pressing against my back. He moved closer, a hand brushing my waist, eyes glazed with desire. Relax, John whispered in my ear, his voice smooth but cruel. Dance. Make him happy, and the papers are signed. Fail, and he let the threat hang. I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a silent breath. Every step I take is for me, not for him, I whispered to myself. That mantra steadied my pulse, sharpened my focus. The music began, a slow, sultry melody that would normally intimidate me, but tonight, I was different. Tonight, I was not a pawn. My arms lifted gracefully, movements fluid, each step precise, each gesture deliberate. I felt the eyes on me, and instead of shrinking, I filled the space with defiance. Mr. Parkinson reached out, attempting to guide me, to pull me closer, but I leaned just out of reach, turning his touch into part of the choreography. Each sway, each spin, became a calculated dance of resistance. You have talent, he murmured, voice low, almost reverent. But you must understand, I only get what I want. I smiled faintly, a curve of lips that didn't reach my eyes. And yet, you are not in control, I replied softly, letting my words flow over him as if they were part of the rhythm. I placed my hand lightly on his shoulder, guiding the movement, making him follow me, not the other way around. He faltered for the first time that evening. John's eyes narrowed, leaning against the balcony rail. His smirk faltered slightly, almost imperceptibly. I could see it, the first crack in his carefully constructed control. The dance continued, every movement a careful blend of grace and subtle rebellion. I allowed Mr. Parkinson to admire my form, to chase the illusion of control, while I planted seeds of doubt, tiny missteps that suggested independence rather than submission. By the time the music reached its crescendo, the room was silent except for the final echo of the last note. I stood tall, chest lifted, gaze unwavering. Mr. Parkinson's obsession lingered, but now tinged with uncertainty. He had followed my lead, unknowingly. John's lips pressed into a thin line. I knew he recognized what I had done. This wasn't just a performance. This was the first move in my strategy to reclaim freedom, to turn his tools against him. I curtsied lightly, ignoring the heat on my skin and the pulse of adrenaline in my veins. Your satisfaction? I asked, voice soft but firm, daring him to admit he had lost control, even momentarily. He blinked, then looked away. I had planted the first seeds of my counterattack. The papers could wait a little longer. I had begun the game on my terms. As I stepped away, whispering my mantra again, every step I take is for me, not for him, I realized something fierce and new. John might own the title of my husband, but he no longer owned me. Not fully. Not anymore. The apartment was quiet, save for the soft hum of my laptop. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, letting out a long breath. The Cheongsam still clung to me from yesterday's performance, a reminder of the game I had been forced to play. But now I had a plan and I wasn't going to be alone. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. My best friend, Mara, stepped in, eyes flicking around the apartment before settling on me. She had been the one to text me after the studio incident, warning me of John's reach. She had lost her own job because of him, and yet, she had returned. "You're serious, aren't you?" Mara asked, voice low, almost a hiss. "About taking him down?" I nodded, setting the laptop on the table. Every step, every move, done carefully but done. He thinks he controls everything. He doesn't. Not anymore. Mara hesitated, then sat across from me. "If we do this, there's no turning back. He'll ruin you completely. Then let him try," I said, meeting her gaze. My voice was cold, steady. "I'm already done surviving for him. I've given him years, and it's enough. I won't let fear chain me anymore." A tense silence fell between us before Mara nodded, a small spark of determination in her eyes.
All right.
"We do this together. But we have to be smart. Evidence, witnesses, anything that can hold him accountable." We spent hours that night going over possibilities. I began documenting every interaction, every manipulation, every threat, every instance of John's interference in my life and career. Old videos of dance competitions, photos from the studio, contracts, all became pieces of the puzzle. Mara knew contacts in the media and legal world, and together we began to quietly map a strategy. "You'll need a backup plan," Mara said. "Social media, competitions, everything. If he tries to stop you, you'll need proof. Public proof." I nodded. Public proof. The thought gave me a flicker of control I hadn't felt in years. I started a private, anonymous account, posting carefully curated clips of my performances, hints at my story, just enough to create intrigue without exposing myself fully. Every performance from now on, I said, eyes gleaming, is for me. Not for him. Not for anyone else. But I'll use them. Mara smiled faintly. "You've changed, Nora. I've never seen you like this. Focused, sharp, unstoppable." I allowed myself a small smirk. I have to be. He's dangerous, but he underestimates me. And underestimating me is his first mistake. By the end of the night, we had a plan. Evidence collected, allies identified, social media accounts seeded with subtle hints. I was ready to step out of the shadows and into the fight. Every text I sent, every post I shared, every note I left in my secret file was a silent promise. John may have controlled my body, my career, even my son's perceptions, but he would never control my mind again. And if he tried, the world would see him for what he really was. The villa was eerily quiet. I moved like a shadow, silent on the polished floors, my pulse thrumming in my ears. John was elsewhere, entertaining a client in the study. Perfect. I had only minutes to find what I needed. The files were hidden behind a false panel in the library, tucked in a stack of innocuous financial reports. My fingers trembled slightly as I pulled them free: contracts, emails, text logs, even private notes to Lily. Everything was there: proof of the way John manipulated competitions, threatened directors, twisted business deals, and even coerced family members to serve his twisted whims. I sank to the floor, shoving papers into a tote bag, heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. All these years, I was never his wife. I was a pawn. The thought rolled over me like a wave, a bitter truth I hadn't fully allowed myself to feel. Every choice I thought I'd made, the life I had built, the sacrifices, the nights spent waiting for his attention, had been carefully orchestrated by him. Every smile he offered, every rare word of praise, had been a calculated tool to keep me in place. I stuffed the last of the documents into the bag and leaned back against the wall, eyes wide with disbelief. The villa felt smaller suddenly, like a cage I had only just realized existed. The sound of footsteps made me freeze.
John.
I held my breath, heart hammering. He passed the doorway, laughing softly with his client, oblivious to my presence. I pressed the tote bag to my chest, hiding it beneath a chair, just as he entered the room. Still sulking in the library, he called, voice smooth, dangerous. "Or, are you planning something?" I forced a smile, calm, measured. "Just catching up on some reading." My voice was steady, but inside, a storm raged. He raised an eyebrow, scanning the room.
"Hmm.
"You've changed, you know. more calculating. I almost like it. I let him leave, pretending to stretch, making no sudden movements. As soon as the door clicked shut, I exhaled slowly, sinking into the shadows of the room. Sitting there, hidden, I let the weight of it all settle. Proof of manipulation, proof of abuse, proof of control, all within reach. For the first time in years, I felt something resembling power. No longer just a wife trapped by his whims. I was something else, a strategist. A woman armed with the truth, ready to act. I whispered to myself, bitter and resolute. He thought he could own me. He thought I'd always bend. But now I have everything I need. The road ahead would be dangerous, filled with threats and risks. But for the first time in nearly a decade, I could see the possibility of freedom. And this time, I would not be fooled, manipulated, or silenced. I glanced down at the tote bag, a silent promise forming in my mind. Every move from here on will be mine. Every step, every plan, every victory. He will not see it coming. And with that thought, I finally allowed myself to stand, the first true flicker of defiance burning bright in my chest. The first step was quiet, invisible to the world. I moved like a shadow. Every action calculated, every word measured. Authorities, studio directors, competition judges, none of them knew that I had the proof John had left in plain sight. Emails were sent, anonymous tips delivered, contracts highlighted, manipulations documented. Lily's victories, John's interference, even the quiet threats, all laid bare, just beneath the surface of a normal day. And yet, I had to tread carefully. One misstep, one hint of my plan, and John would descend like a storm. The studio director, a usually stoic man, approached me mid-morning. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes lingered on me in a way that made my pulse quicken. "Nora, there have been some concerns raised about the recent competition," he said cautiously. "Documentation, contracts, reports, things that point to manipulation." I tilted my head, pretending to be surprised, though every pulse in my body hummed with quiet triumph. Oh, I hadn't realized. But if anyone were unfairly influencing outcomes, well, that's dangerous for everyone involved, isn't it? His nod was slight, but the weight behind it was clear. The rules were finally swinging in my favor. Later, Lily appeared at the studio, radiant in her usual gold and diamonds, expecting admiration. But this time, the room felt different. Eyes flicked to her, whispers buzzing like bees. I met her gaze, calm, poised, and finally allowed the words I had been rehearsing for weeks to slip out. "I danced for him once," I said, voice soft but cutting, every syllable deliberate. "Never again. Now it's your turn to see what losing control feels like." Her smile faltered. She understood. Everyone understood. The balance had shifted. For the first time, Lily's power, the one John had granted her, felt fragile. Then came the subtle confrontations. Associates of John's, people used to his whispered commands and threats, began seeking me out, their eyes wary. "I don't understand," one of them admitted quietly, voice shaking. "We were told you would comply." I leaned closer, voice like ice. "I comply for no one anymore. Not him. Not you. Not anyone. Control is something I take back, not something given." Their hesitation was satisfying, a small taste of what it felt like to finally hold the upper hand. Even John began to notice the shift. Texts and calls came, insistent but controlled, each message a test of my reaction. I didn't flinch. I didn't panic. Instead, I let him see the transformation he had never allowed before. Nora, no longer afraid, no longer pliable, moving pieces across the board while he remained unaware. The counterattack was subtle, but deadly. The truth was spreading quietly, invisibly, touching the right people in the right places. John's grip was loosening, and every calculated step I took brought me closer to freedom. As I left the studio that evening, the sun setting behind the skyline, I whispered to myself, determination ringing in my chest. I will not be his pawn. I will not be his shadow. And soon he will learn what it means to lose control. The ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers, every corner filled with anticipation. Guests murmured in excitement, champagne glasses tinkling. The annual dance gala was the perfect stage, a crowd of influential eyes, competitors, and media. But for me, it was more than a performance. It was my reckoning. John arrived, impeccably dressed, radiating control. His gaze swept the room, and I felt it pierce me for a fraction of a second before I steeled myself. This time, he would not see fear. Lily pranced alongside him, radiant in her usual gold and diamonds, confidence rehearsed and artificial. But tonight, the masks would fall. As the competition commenced, I moved across the stage with precision, grace, and a fire that drew gasps from the audience. Every step was deliberate, a performance of strength and skill. But my real strategy unfolded behind the scenes. Mr. Parkinson, present as a sponsor and judge, watched closely. I had carefully placed evidence of John's manipulations, contracts, emails, videos, into his hands earlier that week. I knew he would confront the truth eventually. When Lily took her turn, she twirled and sparkled as always, but a subtle message on the giant screen behind the stage changed everything. A series of clips flashed: John's interference, Lily's staged victories, private threats, and Mr. Parkinson's obsession exposed. The audience murmured, shocked, whispers weaving like fire through the room. John froze, his jaw tightening as realization dawned. "You think you can humiliate me?" he hissed when I approached him backstage, voice low but venomous. I held his gaze, calm, steady, my heart pounding with a mixture of fury and liberation.
No, John.
"I think I can finally be free." Gasps echoed around us as the crowd realized the truth. Peers, judges, even competition officials looked at me with newfound respect. Lily's confident facade crumbled, her eyes wide with panic as whispers of betrayal spread. And then Leo appeared, walking hesitantly to the edge of the stage, clutching the hand of his nanny. His eyes were wide, scanning the room, finally landing on me. For a moment, I caught the smallest flicker of recognition, not just of me as his mother, but of the courage I had shown. "You've been fighting alone?" he asked softly, voice barely above a whisper. I knelt slightly, keeping my eyes on him. "Not anymore, Leo. We're going to be okay." John's control, once absolute, shattered in the face of truth and exposure. Every ally, every associate, even those who had feared him for years, began to distance themselves. The powerful illusion he had built crumbled in real time, leaving only the man beneath, arrogant, furious, and vulnerable. I stepped into the light, every eye on me, every step a declaration. I was no longer a pawn. I was no longer silenced. And the world, for the first time, saw the real John and the real me. Tonight, victory wasn't about applause or medals. It was about reclamation, justice, and the first taste of freedom I had earned in years. The courthouse smelled faintly of polished wood and ink. I walked through the doors with a calm I hadn't felt in years, the divorce papers folded neatly in my hand. Each step echoed with finality. John sat across the room, perfectly composed, but I could see the tension coiled behind his eyes. He had tried every trick, every manipulation, every threat, but none of it worked. Today, he was powerless. The judge glanced at us, then at the papers, and in a single, decisive moment, stamped them signed. The word finalized felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. I exhaled slowly, a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying lifting from my chest. John's expression darkened, fury simmering in a way that no threat could hide. I looked away, feeling nothing but relief. Later, I arrived at the park where Leo played under the careful watch of a nanny. His small frame ran toward me the moment he saw me, arms outstretched. "Mom," I knelt, scooping him into my embrace, feeling the warmth of his body pressed against mine. I survived the waves. I survived him. Now I live for me, and for you, Leo. His little hands gripped mine tightly. "I missed you, Mom. I don't want anyone else taking care of me." "You won't have to," I whispered, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "From now on, it's just us, and we decide our life." For the first time in years, I felt the freedom to breathe, to move, to live without fear. Every manipulation, every threat, every betrayal had led to this moment, not as a victim, but as a mother reclaiming her son and herself. Later that evening, as Leo slept peacefully beside me, I sat by the window, letting the city lights paint the room in gold and silver. A soft knock drew me from my thoughts. It was Mara, her eyes bright with quiet pride. "You did it," she said, voice full of awe. "I did," I replied, a small smile touching my lips. "And this is just the beginning." A new chapter stretched before me, one of independence, strength, and self-determination. Perhaps even love, though it would come on my terms, earned slowly and carefully. For now, I had Leo, my own life, and the knowledge that nothing could ever control me again. I whispered softly, more to myself than anyone else. I'm free, and I'll never let anyone take that from me again. The waves I had once feared had become my strength. The lies that bound me had crumbled. And in the quiet triumph of that night, I finally understood. Freedom was not just an escape. It was a life I would shape, fiercely, boldly, and without apology. The sunlight streamed through the windows of the dance studio, catching the dust in golden rays. Music filled the room, notes tumbling like laughter, and I moved across the polished floor with a sense of lightness I hadn't felt in years. Every step, every turn, every leap was mine. Owned, unrestrained, free. The studio was quiet at first, but one by one, students began filing in. Young dancers eager to learn, to dream, to create. I watched them, seeing not only talent but potential. A smile tugged at my lips. I had spent years dancing for someone else, for their approval, for their twisted games. Now every movement was for me, and for those I would mentor. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Leo peeked in, eyes wide with excitement. Mom, can I try? I laughed softly, setting aside my notes. Of course, Leo. But you have to promise to listen carefully. He ran to the floor and I guided him gently, correcting his posture, praising his effort. Every laugh, every word, every shared moment reminded me why I fought so hard to break free. Later, Mara joined me, her eyes bright with pride. You really did it, Nora. You took control of your life, and you've built something beautiful. I glanced around at the studio, at the students practicing with concentration and joy, and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. It's not just about me, I said softly. It's about showing everyone here that they can be strong, that they can be free to chase their dreams without fear. A letter arrived that afternoon, bearing the seal of a prestigious dance competition. I smiled as I read it. An invitation, recognition, and opportunity all rolled into one. A reminder that the world still had room for me, beyond the shadow of John, beyond the pain and manipulation I had endured. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the studio, I felt a quiet sense of peace. Leo was asleep upstairs, safe and loved. The dance floor beneath me was mine to command. And for the first time in a long time, I believed in tomorrow. Freedom, I realized, wasn't just leaving someone behind. It was stepping into a life where I chose the steps, set the rhythm, and danced to my own music. And as I twirled in the golden light, I whispered to myself, smiling, "This is just the beginning."